Hey guys, our 5-star journey continues, and in today's video we're gonna look at Tennant, Mr. Duncan and Sweetheart. We're gonna start off with Tennant, and I have to dive into a little bit of a breakdown here first again, because Tennant is a really odd character. So let's go and figure out why exactly that is. So why is Tennant a pretty weird and odd character? That is for two reasons specifically. First of all, you would like to play, or you have to, if you want to play her to her maximum efficiency, you have to play her together with other characters that produce bullets. And there are no characters in this game that consistently do this other than low para and Mr. Duncan. And so for that reason is you would have to play Tennant with at least low para, right? Otherwise she will never get the maximum amount of damage that she could deal with her ultimate, as for each type of bullet held by allies, the attack deals an additional 40% reality damage, and this can stack up to 200% reality damage. But again, there are no characters that consistently provide themselves or other characters with bullets other than low para. So if you don't have low para, you can't play Tennant together with low para, and that will already weaken her and make it so that she is not played to her maximum efficiency. Now there's another character that consistently provides bullets, and that is Mr. Duncan. The problem with Mr. Duncan is that he's one of the worst characters in the game, and he has very low numbers, and he will not do the trick, right? Then there is another problem, and that problem is specifically about Tennant, because again, to play her to her maximum efficiency, if you would want to do that, then since after an ally takes an action, if this unit is holding at least 2 stacks of diamond bullet, you would cast your incantation number 2 for free. Now the problem with that is that you cannot be consistently at 2 stacks of diamond bullet, because the only way to produce these bullets is to, either when you enter the battle you gain 1 bullet, right? Or you gain a bullet at odd numbered rounds. So, you know, at round 1, that is an odd numbered turn. And when you enter battle, then you will gain a bullet. That would put you at 2 bullets. So, theoretically, that isn't a problem. You are immediately at 2 bullets, and if you never use an attack actively, then you would always be at 2 stacks of bullets. And it would lead to Tennant playing herself. That is not how it works, because if you are at 2 stacks, and then an ally takes an action, you will cast your incantation number 2, and that triggers a bullet. So you are immediately not at 2 bullets anymore, and next turn, on turn 2, that is not an odd number, so you won't gain a bullet, and then you are stuck with 1 bullet, right? And that keeps cycling and cycling and cycling throughout the entire match. So it doesn't work, you know, at least not consistently. Every 2 turns you can use this twice, and then you trigger 2 bullets, and that would lead to you casting your incantation number 1, which provides shields to your entire team. But all of this takes place every 2 turns at best, right? Like, even if you trigger these 2 bullets, you have 0, and then you have to wait at least 2 turns to gain a bullet back. You know, you can see why this is not going to work. You do not produce the bullets that you need for yourself. You will never have them. And there, of course, there is another way to produce bullets, and that is using your ultimate. But you would need Moxie, and that would, you know, you need then to actively cast incantations, which these incantations then trigger bullets, you know, and you only gain 2 bullets from using your ultimate, and then again the cycle just continues. It doesn't work. You gain 2 bullets, you lose bullets, and you will never reach the amount of bullets that you would need to actually work as a character. There is another odd thing. Now that is not a huge problem, but I just want to mention that real quick, is that whenever a bullet triggers, whenever you attack, then you use up a bullet, and since you do that, the reality defense of your target decreases by 30% for 2 rounds. That is one of the best things, one of the core things that Tennant does, and this is what we really have to focus on. What Tennant is all about if we want to play her to the best of our ability, because all of this stuff here is never ever going to work no matter what. You know, it's always, no matter how you spin it, it's always going to be inefficient. It's never going to reach its full potential. It is impossible, okay? So we have to focus ourselves onto the fundamentals, and that is shredding the enemy's reality defense and providing shields to our team. So what you want to do is, every time you have access to a bullet, you cast your incantation number 2 onto a target, and then you play Tennant together with a main and a sub DPS that both deal reality damage, to then shred the enemy's reality defense with Tennant by triggering the bullet, by using her incantation number 2, and then you attack them with your main and your sub DPS, the target that you shred the reality defense for. Other than that, you will always just cast your buff incantation to constantly provide shields to your team, and that's going to be all you're doing. And whenever you have your ultimate, you're going to use that ultimate onto the target that you want to shred their reality damage, you know? Another thing that I want to mention real quick is, in version 3.0, there is the character Sentinel releasing. And that is another character, such as Low Para, a good character, that actually generates and provides your team with bullets. So that is great synergy with Tennant. There's also another thing, because Sentinel her place is in the Blood Ember team. And in this Blood Ember team you play Medicine Pocket as your healer. Now, Medicine Pocket will only start healing once your characters fall onto 50% or below. So your characters will often be at 50% HP or below. And that, it has great synergy with Tennant, because if Tennant starts around with HP below 50%, she immediately provides shields to your team. Now, that is not something too impressive, because Medicine Pocket already provides shields, but only if the characters are above 50%. And then he starts healing, but Tennant provides your team with shields when your characters are below 50%, you know? So no one is ever gonna actually play Tennant in the Bloodlight team, okay, let's be real here. But there is some synergy going on here, and I just want to mention that real quick to really have the summary here complete. So if you really want to get the maximum possible efficiency out of Tennant, then you play her with Low Para right now, and you pull for Sentinel in version 3.0. It would be actually hilarious if someone would actually do that, just to get the most amount of efficiency out of Tennant. But you know, that would really be the best. You play Tennant together with Sentinel and Low Para, and then you add Medicine Pocket as a healer to your team. That would be the best in case for Tennant that is possible in this game. Although yeah, you have to wait for 3.0 if you are funny enough to actually make that work and pull this off, okay? So yeah, now we can look a little bit onto in-game footage. So here we go, just real quick. Now I don't have Tennant's Inside 1 unlocked. If I would have done that, then I would have a bullet right now, and I would use her incantation number 2 onto an enemy that I want to focus down to shred his reality defense, right? He would now take 30% more reality damage, and then my main DPS and my sub DPSs that both deal reality damage would come in and focus this target down. And other than that, all you do with Tennant is you provide shields to your team with her incantation number 1. You do this, right? By the way, the reality defense shred with your incantation number 2. You want to do this like every second round, basically. Now, in this specific case here, the target that I shredded the defense for died. So I would now need to apply this to the target that I want to kill next, right? Always shred the reality defense from the target that you want to focus down with your 2 DPS characters. And then again, other than that, from like turn 2, turn 3, you always just provide shields to your team. And you constantly cycle this process until you unlock your ultimate, and then you use your ultimate, and that's it. And only if you have a bullet, only then do you shred the reality defense of a target, right, of the target that you attack. You have to keep this in mind. Don't use your incantation number 2 thinking it would reduce the reality defense from your target. No, you have to have that bullet. And yeah, right, you can see where the problems come when we actually want to play Tennant. It's very, it just, honestly, it just doesn't work. It just does not function. But yeah, let me unlock her ultimate real quick. Yeah, again, here it deals damage to 1 target and you gain 2 diamond bullets. The bullets that you need to shred the reality defense from an opponent with your incantation number 2. And that's about Tennant. That's all she does. She shreds reality defense and she provides shields to your team. Everything else doesn't work. Like, I really can't recommend Tennant to anyone, as you would also need to invest the resources to actually unlock a Euphoria update, and you just don't want to do that. But Tennant is not necessarily a bad character, even though she doesn't really function to her maximum efficiency. She, thanks to having a Euphoria update, she has very good stats. Her numbers are alright, you know, she has synergy even, she provides the shield, she shreds the reality defense, you know, so it's not a bad standalone character by any means, but yeah, also not very good. But now let's move on to Mr. Duncan. Alright, Mr. Duncan is also all about bullets. Now the huge problem and why Mr. Duncan is one of, if not even the worst character in the entire game, is because his numbers are teeny tiny low, no matter where you look. For an example, if you use a bullet with Tennant, you reduce the target's reality damage by 30%. Mr. Duncan does the exact same thing. When he has a bullet, and when he attacks, he reduces the reality defense by an opponent also, but not 30% like Tennant would, but by 5%, you know? And if we look at his incantation number 2, you can see this deals 70% reality damage to 2 enemies. Usually, if 5 stars have an attack that hits multiple targets, it is at least 130 there. Here, this is 70%. And you can read this further, right? Even if your opponent is below 50%, you only increase your damage by roughly 100%. It is based around how much attack stat you have. And yeah, like Duncan doesn't have a very high attack stat, so it is like in total it would be like 100 reality damage or 110 maybe, you know, roughly speaking. And this is only the case if your target is below 50%. Like the numbers here are complete trash. It's laughable, you know. But anyways, so you want to produce bullets and you want to trigger bullets with Duncan. To do this, you use your incantation number 1 because this gives you 2 bullets, and you enter the quick draw status, which now, whenever you are in the quick draw status and Mr. Duncan would be about to attack, then before this attack actually happens, he would cast an incantation that is called Counter Rapid Fire. and it will deal a little bit of damage to your opponent before he deals his damage to you. Additionally, let me make some notes here about his insight that I haven't unlocked, by the way. So whenever an ally would trigger a bullet, this is also why he desperately wants to be played in teams with characters that provide themselves or their teammates with bullets. You know, we already talked about this in great detail when we looked at Tennant. And whenever an ally triggers a bullet, Mr. Duncan gets 1 stack of Ceremonious, which increases his damage output with his ultimate by 3%. And this can stack up to 100 times, so the more bullets are used, the more his damage with his ultimate will be increased. Also, whenever Mr. Duncan would score a critical hit or KO an enemy, he would gain a bullet. And if he has done 3 crits in total, he would gain a Moxie. And yeah, that's all you do. As we figured out, right, his incantation number 2 is complete trash. You would want to remain from using this as much as you possibly can. Then all you want to do is his incantation number 1, preferably every single turn. So you always keep counter-attacking and you always have these bullets at your arsenal and to obtain the Moxie, right? So yeah, let's just go ahead and do that real quick, and just to obtain as much Moxie with him as possible, so I can showcase you the ultimate and we can look at laughable numbers once again. But yeah, when it comes down to how to play Duncan, you want to pair him with teammates that produce and use bullets, and all you wanna ever do is use his incantation number 1, so he counter attacks and gains bullets. That's really all about it. When we talk about 5-star characters, when they have a 1 target attack with their ultimate, then they always deal at least 550% reality damage, or damage, right, for that matter. But Duncan doesn't do that. He deals 500, so he's already lacking, again, numbers here. It's already a lackluster damage output that he will have. So that's why he highly depends on these Ceremonious stacks that his allies give him by using the bullets. That is already really awkward, and you know why? Because we had talked about the same thing when we talked about Tennant. Now this attack gains plus 10% critical hit rate. That is not enough, because this is for other characters, this would be a bonus, right? The Ceremonious stacks and this increase of critical hit rate, that would be a bonus for other characters. For Mr. Duncan, that is not a bonus. He heavily relies on it. He needs that to work. This is a gamble for him, because his numbers are so teeny tiny low, they don't hold up, right? This is why, if you looked at my 5-star tier list, he is in the very bottom F tier, and he is in fact one of, if not the worst 5-star in the entire game, because he doesn't do anything, as everything that he does, like shredding the reality defense, is extremely hardcore outclassed by a character, for example, like Tennant, you know. And yeah, his numbers are like the most laughable numbers I have seen personally in this game. I don't know who would ever have lower numbers. And yeah, that's why I would highly recommend you to not play Mr. Duncan. Like, even if you pair him with characters that use bullets, it's a disaster, really. You would be better off using any other character, because any other character has better numbers, deals more damage, and doesn't rely on this weird bullet mechanic. Like, you see, Mr. Duncan, he really needs that. He needs this Ceremonious stacks. He needs allies that provide bullets to themselves, you know? Tennant doesn't need that necessarily. She would only need that if you want to play her to her maximum efficiency, but even if you don't play her to her maximum efficiency, she still is a good standalone character with good stats and good numbers. Mr. Duncan is none of that, and that's all about it. Now let's move on to Sweetheart. Now onto Sweetheart. She, again, I don't have her insights unlocked, but what she would do with her insights is that she inflicts a stack of Enchanted to one of her opponents, and this Enchanted debuff it could stack, and she would apply more Enchanted debuffs if the target would be of the opposite gender, so two males. That is pretty irrelevant and will almost never happen, but I wanted to mention it. So her insight is pretty garbage, all things considered, but it's not completely irrelevant, as if we look at her incantations, then yeah, her incantation number 1 is just deals reality damage. Solid number, good number here. And her incantation number 2 is where the Enchanted stacks come in, because Enchanted is a debuff, and this it takes 2 enemies. Her incantation number 2, it attacks 2 enemies. It deals 135% reality damage. But if the target is has a debuff on him, then this attack would deal 50% more damage to the target with the debuff on, right? Only to the targets that have Enchanted on them, or any other debuff for that matter. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So the numbers here are quite solid actually. Just her insight is really bad, and having a good insight is pretty important. Most characters, they are all about their insights, and the insight is a gigantic buff to the characters, usually, right? For Sweetheart, that is absolutely not the case. So in order to play her to the maximum efficiency, you would want to play her together with characters that apply debuffs, right? That is actually not too much to ask for, so not too shabby here. And then she has an interesting ultimate. All things considered, she is really very simple and straightforward. She doesn't do anything basically other than she deals damage, and she deals more damage when the enemies are afflicted by debuffs. That's all she does, really. Oh yeah, and I should mention, like this debuff Enchanted that she provides through her insight. Yeah, she will never inflict a huge amount of these Enchanted debuffs to begin with, but it would make it so that they deal less damage to Sweetheart. Not in general, but only to Sweetheart. So yeah, her insight is complete garbage, other than the fact that one of her incantations does a little bit more damage, and that's about it. So now let's unlock her ultimate and take a look at that real quick. So it deals 600% reality damage. Remember that whenever a 5-star has an ultimate that is a 1-target attack, it usually deals 550%, excuse me, damage, and then has bonuses added on top of it. This one deals 600, so the number here is bigger than usual. And also, she inflicts reality defense and mental defense down, both of them, by 30% for 3 rounds. That is actually nuts. And it even goes further than that. She also inflicts daze onto this target. So it would get stunned for 1 round and would be unable to act. So this ultimate is actually quite good, even though it hits only 1 target. But it is a pretty solid ultimate, considering we are talking about 5 stars here.
Just like real diamonds.
See, this ultimate just one-shot the target. But even if it wouldn't, it would inflict good beneficial effects. So yeah, like Sweetheart, pretty boring character. Doesn't really provide anything to the team, but yeah, she deals damage, but yeah, I mean, see, this is all she does. She doesn't cleanse debuffs, she doesn't do anything but deal damage, and her insight is trash. But I mean, that's about her. It's actually not an unplayable character. She's way better than a character like Mr.Duncan would be. She is not reliant onto anything either, like Mr.Duncan or Tennant would be. She's a standalone character that can be slotted into every single team out there. So yeah, that's it, right? Again, you would just use her incantations to deal damage, and when you have your ultimate, remember that it actually stuns an opponent, so you can use this to your benefit, right? Alright guys, I'm gonna be honest here. I was a little bit confused about the numbers concerning her ultimate, and I've now tested her in multiple different stages with multiple different teams, with multiple different opponents and everything. And the numbers that I presented in this video are actually 100% correct. So in my previous video where I made a tier list for 5 stars, I put Sweetheart into the F tier, and yeah, she will now move up a rank, because I was looking at Pridewin for the numbers and they got the numbers there completely wrong. Okay, so yeah, excuse me for that. If you watched my 5-star tier list, then you can move Sweetheart up a rank, because her numbers are actually way better concerning her ultimate than I thought. I thought she deals 400% damage with her ultimate and only reduces the defenses by 20%, but it's 30% for both defenses, and she deals 200% more damage with her ultimate than I actually thought. So I looked at completely wrong and flawed information and therefore made false placement. She only ranks up 1 rank because yeah, she's nothing special, and yeah, she just doesn't provide anything useful to any team or something like that, but her damage is more respectable than I initially thought. Her ultimate is quite good actually, and that deserves more respect than F tier. So there we go. But that was it about the video. That was how to play Mr. Duncan, how to play Tennant, and how to play Sweetheart. Again, Sweetheart, very straightforward. You basically just use your incantations to deal a bunch of damage and to generate Moxie to unlock her ultimate really quickly, because her ultimate is actually pretty good. And yeah, that's about it. I hope that was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, don't forget to join the Discord server. Take care of yourselves, have a great day, and we love this game.